Yeah. Okay, so we're going to be going over GimbalLock today. It's like your secret enemy. Um, Basically, the rotations, the X, Y, Z rotations exist in a hierarchy of themselves. That's the easiest way to think of it. So they have a grandparent-parent-child relationship between the three of them. And I'm going to show you where those exist. And we may do a little drawing in Photoshop to try to illustrate it beforehand. But we'll see. I'll probably just show you in Maya. So basically, if you are to create any old object in Maya, but particularly with joints, when we start using those for our characters, they have a rotation order. And you're going to want to manipulate the rotation order so that you can avoid GimbalLock. It's impossible to get rid of GimbalLock entirely, just so you know. But you can take some measures to make it highly unlikely. So I'm going to create just a simple we'll do a cube. And I'll select my rotation tool. I'll press Control A to go to my attribute editor, and then I'm going to select the transform. Now I have this rotation order attribute here, and right now it's X, Y, Z. Before I actually continue, I need to change my rotate tool settings. Go to tool settings with my rotate tool selected, and I switch it to gimbal mode. This gimbal mode, the rotate mode, when it's set to gimbal, this is the only true rotations in Maya. All the rest are a lie. So when you're, and I can show you that. So like, if I go to local, let's do a little experiment. If I go to local mode, and have my channel box open, watch my rotates. So I'm going to rotate Y, and which attribute is changing? My rotate Y. Okay, that seems like it's probably working just fine. Well, now I'm going to change my X. Okay, X is the only attribute that's moving. That's also pretty good. But if I change my Z now, look at that. My attributes, all three, X, Y, and Z, are having to adjust to give me a Z rotation. What's that mean? It means I'm not really rotating in Z. Right? Maya is lying to me and making it look like making me think that I am. Why is this important? As an animator, you want to have nice curves in the graph editor. You want to have predictable curves in the graph editor. And if this is the case with your rotations, where you're rotating, say, in this scenario, Z, and it's updating all three attributes, the likelihood of you being able to use the graph editor to produce good animation is next to none. And I guarantee you that if you're seeking to be a professional animator, that you will be using the graph editor a lot. So we need to create a situation where we can avoid this, so that when Z rotates, it truly is Z. That way, when you key it and you move to the next frame and rotate Z again, you know that the only attribute that you have to adjust in your graph editor, because you didn't do it quite right the first time, is your Z attribute. Okay, so I'm going to undo those rotations. I'm going to go to my tool settings and switch to gimbal mode. Now, remember that my rotation order for this cube is set to XYZ. What that means is that X is a child to Y. So that means that if I move, well, let me continue, I guess. And Y is a child to Z. So in essence, Z is the grandparent of this relationship. And Y is a parent. And X is the child. So if I rotate in X, you can see that it only rotates, it's rotating the cube, but it's also only rotating in X. Now, if I rotate in Y, it rotates only in Y. But what happens? X is a child of Y. So X rotates also. Okay? Now if I grab Z, which is the granddaddy of them all, then this, with our settings, our rotate order settings being X, Y, Z, then all of them are going to move with it. So you can see that X and Y are both following. Okay. Now that's that. So let me show you real quick what GimbalLock is. If I rotate the parent axes 90 degrees, so if I rotate Y 90 degrees, look what's happening. I'm short one rotation axis now. This is GimbalLock. How in the world am I supposed to rotate it like this? You know, straight on from the camera. It's impossible. And that's why Maya chooses to lie to you. Okay? Because if I switch my tool back to let's see, my tool settings. If I switch my tool settings back to local,
How did you get the tool settings back?
you can double click on your tool in your toolbox, like your rotate or whatever, and it'll pull it up. But you can also get to it at the top. This pulls up your tool settings. I should reiterate that. At the top here with a little tiny wrench, you can click on that, and that will bring up your tool settings also. So I switched my tool settings back to local. I'm going to go back to my channel box so that I can see what's going to happen now. And if I rotate in Z, what happened? It actually rotated X and Z to 90 degrees, and when I grab the Z handle, I'm actually rotating in Y. So that's not very helpful. I think everybody will agree. So how do you avoid this? Well, we'll have to set up a little scenario, and a really common place for this to be a problem is in the hip joint. So I'm going to delete this object, and I'm going to create a few joints real quick. To create joints, those who want to follow along, you need to have your animation menu set selected, and then you'll have a skeleton menu. When you create joints, you need to do it from one of your orthographic views. I'm going to choose the front view, and I'm not going to create all the joints. I'm just going to create enough to illustrate the problem. And the skeleton joint tool. Then we'll hold down X so I can just snap to the grid. And I'm creating a little hip scenario. Okay. So it appears my graphics card is out of whack. So let me pause the recording real quick to get my graphics card working so my joints will render correctly. You'll see what I'm talking when we come back. Okay, so this is what it should have looked like. The bones should draw a connection between the bones.